marketing things I want to ask you about, but I want to ask you a little bit about your definition of success. I mean, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot. And you created this list that you shared with me a few years ago. And I actually did a separate interview just on this particular subject, but I think it is worth mentioning because I think it's so profound and so powerful. I don't think you even look at it as maybe as profound, as important as I actually do for the audience. But nonetheless, you created this list of 10 traits called I Know I'm Being Successful When. And it became a criteria. So could you maybe explain what that is? And I'd like the audience to be able to take away this concept and apply it in their own business and their own lives.
Yeah. So where that came from was this observation that I had that there's always more. You know, there's always another level. There's all, you know, when you reach a level of success, you always sort of, you know, you think about it yourself. When you first start out, you know, you just get out of school and you're, you know, in your early 20s and you're thinking, man, if I could just make $100,000, that I can't imagine how I'd spend that all. You know, like, I mean, that's a lot of money. And you get to $100,000 and then you start thinking, man, I wonder what it would be like if I could make 500,000. Then I'd really be living, you know. And then you get to 500,000 and you're like, wow, $1 million. Can you imagine $1 million a year? And then you get to $1 million a year and you see all around you, because as you're going, I think your reference group changes too. You know, you start seeing people that have all kind of come up together, or, you know, you start hanging around other people that, you know, make $1 million, but then you're hanging around people that are making $3 or $4 million, and it's, you know, it's never ending. And so what I really started to look at that point was to say, well, let's kind of push the accelerator pedal here and just go up ahead and see, like, how am I going to know when I get there? How am I going to define success? Because it's so easy to define success by all the other people around you and the next level, and not really appreciate what it is that you have right now, and knowing that being future-oriented like that is always going to, you know, be a future-oriented thing. You're going to get up, but you know, as Dan Sullivan says, the horizon changes. You know, you never reach the horizon, because when you get closer now, you've got a different vista. It's still out there.
Exactly.
So having, for me, my own definition of success, so it's a self-referential thing. So I look at it and say, well, so what is it aside from an amount of money, or aside from an accumulation of things, what are the feelings or the being of being successful? How would I define those? How would I use those as a reference point for evaluating anything that I want to get involved in? So I went through and I started looking at, well, what are the things that what would make up an ideal lifestyle for me? Because ultimately that's really how I define success would be like the lifestyle and the way that you enjoy each day, you know? So I look at, so in the present sense, how would I describe being successful? So that's why I know I'm being successful when. It's not I know I will be successful when. It's I know I'm being successful when.
So it's never like a place where you arrived or where you're there. It's being that way when certain things exist.
Right. So I look at it. So for me, some of those things on my list, and I've worked with you on putting together your list, but, you know, for me, some of those things were, I know I'm being successful when I can wake up every day and say, what would I like to do today? That, to me, is, you know, the good encapsulation of being completely free of time constraints. It's not, I don't have, you know, a calendar that's booked with appointments every, you know, hour, or my calendar is full all the time. I mean, it's not, it's like I wake up whenever I want, and whatever I'm always working on things. I'm always working on projects, but I'm always doing things that I'm doing them in the moment, you know? So another one for me would be, I know I'm being successful when I'm working on projects that excite me and allow me to do my very best work. So you're still allowing to push yourself and stretch yourself and develop new capabilities and, you know, do things that are equal to the ability that you have or a little bit beyond the ability that you have, so you continue to grow.
Right.
But I'm not obsessive about it. I'm not getting out of my league. I'm not getting into things that are going to create lots of these headaches for me. And it's just been, for me, having my list of I know I'm being successful has really helped me to have almost like a map to look at, or a checklist to look at.
It's kind of like a compass for you, right?
A compass, that's a great word. So I know whenever I get faced with an opportunity, is it going to get me closer or further away from my definition of success?
Successful win is that you said this is self-focused, not outwardly focused. I'm not sure the exact word you used.
Yeah, self-referential. I mean, that's an internal frame of reference. I'm not judging my success by what kind of car you drive or where you live or how much money you make. I'm judging my success based on my own internal reference point for what success means.
Right. And here's why I think that is so important is I believe so many people, they read books, they go to seminars, they attach themselves to an expert, a guru, a whatever, and they attempt to adopt that person's 7 steps to success, the 14 rules of ultimate happiness, the 4 quadrants of whatever. And I'm not saying, I don't mean to slam anyone in particular. That 4 quadrants sounded like I was actually slamming Stephen Covey, which I'm not, because 7 Habits is actually a great book. Now the point is, though, is that people can take other people's quote-unquote expertise or advice and try to make it their own, when in a lot of ways that's like a kid that goes to medical school because his father really wanted him to, but he really wants to be a musician. And this person gets years of training in something that is not their ability, is not their interest, that is not their passion, and they end up leading these miserable, unfulfilling lives because they're trying to be successful for someone else's reason, not their own. And I think why it's such a valuable discussion to have with you about this is I know I'm being successful when, not I know I'm successful when I've hit this number of dollars in the bank, or when I've achieved this degree and this status symbol, or I've married, I mean, so many people's lives, it's nothing but image management, but they're not happy. And you are a guy that, from all my observation of years of knowing you, is just, a genuinely happy guy. And you do kind of what you want to do when you want to do it, and you don't answer to anyone, and you set up conditions that allow you to have kind of a friction-free life. Better than, I mean, I can count 10 people in the world that I can think of that seem to kind of do what it is they want to do as well as you, which is one of the reasons I'm interviewing you on this. So what are some other things, and then we're going to move on to another.
Well, I mean, I just want to say, too, and that's the same thing goes there, that my definition of success is not necessarily going to be other people's. And I said earlier that I don't judge my success by what kind of car you drive or where you live. And
do you
that
think
doesn't
your car's
mean,
better than mine, seriously?
Well, I think it is.
I think my...
And that's what I'm saying, is that doesn't mean I don't drive cool cars and live in cool houses and have all this stuff. It's not about, not having stuff or not, but it's, for me, it's the stuff is secondary to my lifestyle. I made the decision early on to lead with lifestyle, lead with revenue, because one of the things is that my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. That's my second definition of success. So when I know that, I would never be in a position that I'm driven by, I got to drive this cool car, and I got to live in this cool house, and I got to have another house, and get myself into a situation where I have to work the hamster wheel really hard to support this lifestyle. I worked hard to develop the revenue machine first, and then let my lifestyle lag behind that. And it's just such a more peaceful way. So you wanted to hear a couple more of my...
Yeah, just because I think they're kind of cool. For this reason, though, for our audience, is that I don't want anyone to say, yeah, that's my definition of success. I just want someone to observe and hear how you actually came up with what ended up becoming the way that you run your business and run your life.
And they're just kind of benchmarks and reminders of what's important about my life. So time freedom is a big thing for me. So that's my top one, that I know I'm being successful when I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? Then my second one is that my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. Then I can live anywhere in the world I choose. And because I wanted to have a lifestyle where we split our time. So I spend the winters in Florida, I spend the summers in Toronto, and so that choice alone, that's an important choice to me, and that, you know, means I am not likely to get involved in a local business that requires me to be in Florida or in Winter Haven at one particular time, or to be in Toronto all the time. Right. You know, so that was an important thing for me. I mentioned that I'm working on projects that I'm excited about and allow me to do my very best work. That's a great state to be in. Wouldn't it be great if every day you wake up and decide what would you like to do today, and what you would like to do today is work on a project that excites you and allows you to do your very best work.
Yeah, and I love the way that you add "and allows me to do my very best work," because say you're really excited about playing basketball, but you're really not good at
right.
it. Then you could be really excited about it, but you certainly can't do your best work.
Right.
So it's kind of like finding both.
Right. Yeah,
okay.
And my very best work is not time bound either. I mean, my very best work today is not going to be my very best work and capabilities 5 years from now, because right. I'm constantly growing. I'm better now than I was 5 years ago, because you know different things. You have different distinctions. So a couple of more, there are no whiny people in my life.
No whiny people.
Right. And so I look at that. I want to be hanging around people that are, you know, that are cool to be around, and that I'm not beholden to anybody or in a situation where I have to take somebody's whininess, you know,
because energy drainers,
because we have a client relationship or whatever. And a lot of people get into that where they, you know, because their lifestyle depends on them making a certain amount of money. They've got a client who has a lot of, you know, revenue percentage in their business, and they're whiny, and they have to, you know, continue on with that client because they mean such a big piece of their revenue.
Yeah, you know? And people put up with an enormous amount of shit because of that belief.
Yeah. So I go on. I would say, so I can wear. Yeah. No. Exactly. Right. So I can wear whatever I want at all times.
And I've noticed, by the way, that you can wear whatever you want.
Yeah, but you know, it's funny when I say that, because I wear the same thing all the time. And
well, no, here, this is funny. Let me stop you there for a moment. We had this conversation last night. It never occurred to me, and I've known you for the longest time, that this is, you know, you kind of always
I just started that maybe 3 years ago.
Well, you're always wearing black shirts and like tan shorts and baseball caps. Not always baseball caps, but most of the time you have a cap on. Yeah. And it's usually black. Yeah. And you were talking about Steve Jobs having his uniform. And like,
well, somebody pointed that out to me afterwards, because I've been wearing this uniform, and then I saw somebody sent me an article that was billionaires in their uniforms, and it was, you know, I had never thought about it before, but you know, Steve Jobs always wears the same thing, the black mock neck and the jeans, and Larry Ellison wears the same thing all the time. Albert Einstein wore the same thing all the time, and I've just kind of adapted it as, you know, something for me.
Right.
And
okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's hysterical. So you were telling me that you own how many of these shirts?
I probably have like 30 of these shirts. I've got about 10 pairs of these shorts and about 10 or 12 of these hats. And it's you know, we're the same underwear, the same socks, and
not so, same underwear, the same style.
No, but it's kind of freeing, you know. I mean, nothing in my life really, you know, depends on me wearing anything but this.
Well, first off, this has been bothering me, because I thought about it last night. I thought about it today, and I was like, you know, if you only had to, like, not have to think in the morning about what to wear in different colors and this and that, and try certain things on, you know, that would actually simplify your life. But there's another side of me. It's like, I don't want to be wearing the same thing walking around all the time. But I've really thought about, God, you know, it's an interesting concept, and it doesn't much matter what your reasons are. The point is, I think the end result is you want a friction-free life without hurdles, without restrictions, in anything that you can do that just makes life a little bit easier.
Simplicity. I mean, that's the thing. There's something about that. So, you know, I wear my watch for curiosity only. That's one of my other success things, and that's something that, you know, to me, that symbolizes that I'm not going to be in a thing where I have to be constantly aware of the clock to get to the next appointment, or, oh, I've got this conference call. For me, having one thing on my calendar that is a time commitment is a blight on that entire day to me. It's like this speed bump in my day. And I don't know how, I mean, sometimes that's, for me, that's just a thing that I have. Some people, I have a friend who's a mortgage broker, and his ideal is to have appointments booked, you know, on the hour, back to back to back. And for him, that's his definition of success, where he comes in and he's got all his appointments lined up. And, you know.
Well, okay, so there could be people on there going, oh my God, you know, I would, that's what I want. And a lot of times they could be trying to adapt your value system, because you're kind of talking about it and it sounds kind of cool.
Right.
And, you know, they also are faced with the question of, you know, well, how do you really know? I mean, what advice could you give for people out there that wanted to develop their own, I know I'm being successful when? One of the ones that I came up with after spending, I should actually tell the story. I went to Toronto, and I was going to Strategic Coach, which is a program I'm in with Dan Sullivan, who's an awesome guy. And I decided to stay in Toronto for a few days, and I stayed at the home you have in Toronto. And I asked you and your wife, you know, do you guys got an alarm clock? Because I was going to get up in the morning and try to go work out. And you looked at Sony, your wife, and you're like, do we have an alarm clock? And she's like, this blank stare, like, I don't think so. And you look at me, you're like, you know, we don't have an alarm clock. And I'm thinking you're screwing with me.
I know, it's so funny. I mean, it had never come up. I don't ever think like that. It's kind of funny.
And I'm like, and I said, I'm like, you don't have an alarm clock?
Right.
And you're like, no, we don't have any. I'm like, man, that's when it crystallized for me that you absolutely have set your life up to live that sort of way. Now, for me, you know, that wouldn't be the total way that I do it, but at the same time, so we had some discussions about my I know I'm being successful win list, and one of the ones I wrote down, I wrote many, but the one that I wrote down that I really like is I live like an artist with a $50,000 a month trust fund.
Yeah.
Because we identified how much money do I really need to do the things I want to do? Everything above that is gravy.
Right.
But, you know, how much money does it really take?
Right.
And so I thought, you know, the perfect thing would be to live like an artist, doing what I want to do, using my creativity, using my abilities, and have money.
Yeah.
Because, you know, artists without money, that's why they're called starving artists.
Right.
And a lot of people, they try to do what it is they want to do, but they haven't got the money part figured out.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the money part figured out, you don't really have freedom. And a lot of business owners, I think most business owners really get into business because of freedom. A lot don't think of it that way.
Absolutely.
But, you know,
what's more free than being an artist? I mean, that kind of expression is, you know, that's a life metaphor for me. That's the way why I've adopted that of you know, being like an artist with a $50,000 a month trust